if everybody would, if you could go ahead into the chat box, go ahead and type in your name. That would be very helpful so I can know exactly who's here. And make sure you put your son's name as well. So if you haven't signed in, just do that in your chat box for me. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And thank you guys for being here. I'm going to go ahead and present some things. And if you guys have questions, you may just have to interject because once I start presenting, I can't see the rest of the screens and such. And my wife's on her computer, and hopefully she can let people in if they come in after this point. But I'm going to just start off with just some things that I want to share about everything that's going on right now. Hold on one second. It sounds like I got a sound issue. Am I echo to y'all? Nobody else says I'm echoing. Okay. All right. So if you can, we need some peanut butter and chocolate milk donations. You can go to Aldi and get that quart there at Aldi for just a little over $1. We'll put those in the refrigerator and we'll be able to give those to the kids immediately after their workouts, which will help with a lot of them trying to put on weight or at least put on the right weight. We have our Sunday speed development camp series. It starts next Sunday at 1. We've posted that on our website and also on our Facebook group. So if you need anything, you can certainly email me at jodavis@bcswan.net for any of those people who have already registered. We'll be sending out emails this week to give details about what we're going to expect starting next week. Spring schedule, we're very limited with the fields. No practice fields have been opened up for people this spring. So we got teams that are having to travel off campus and everything else. So it's going to be rather difficult for us to accomplish all the things we'd want this spring. But we'll try to figure out a way. Right now, it does look as if we're going to utilize some Saturdays. And I'm not trying to take in everybody's schedule, but we do know that the Saturdays where it's underutilized on the field, we can use that in the morning and hopefully get some things done then where we couldn't do it during the week. We got some fundraisers that are taking place. We have a booster raffle. Your son should be bringing home some tickets soon. And then we're going to have a calendar raffle because we have a couple of camps that we need to pay for. And we have a lot of other needs as we go throughout the summer. Our summer schedule is posted on our website. It is subject to change, especially in June, because we're trying to figure out some things again about Ferrum and our FCA camp. So do reference our school website so that you can see our calendar from there. And what I really want to do tonight was obviously let's get into recruiting. So I'm going to go through this. And again, if you have any questions, oops, that's not what I want. If you have any questions about any of this, then please let me know and I will do my very best to answer them and get the answers to you if I don't know. But it is an ever-changing process, and one of which that it's hard to predict all the time what's going to happen. It's not like it once was, and things have certainly changed more rapidly since COVID than probably at any other time during recruiting in college, from high school to college. All right, so let's look at the various divisions that you have. You have the NCAA that everybody knows. Those are the major institutions that you'd be recognized there with their NCAA stamp and logo. But there's also NAIA, NCCAA, which is the Christian Colleges Athletic Association. And then you have your junior college, community college, and then you have your prep school route. The NCAA has three divisions. Division one, they have for football 85 full scholarships. They can't break them up. FCS has equivalency of 63 full scholarships. They can break them up. Division two, they have at most 36, and it depends on their conference if they're allowed to have that many. It also depends on their endowment, how much money they have in their school endowment that would allow them to be able to provide that. Some Division two schools have like 5 scholarships that they can give, and they have to try to build a team. Playing against other schools have 36, so it makes it a little bit challenging for them. Division three has 0 athletic scholarships. So what they have to do is they have to package it through academics and other grants and loans to get a kid to go play football at that school. But at the end of this, I'll share this whole presentation. It should pop into Facebook. I think at about 8, I think that's when I timed it to go into the Facebook group. So you guys can check this whole PowerPoint presentation out, and you can click on some of these links if necessary. But you can see some of the eligibility standards for each one of those levels in NCAA. NAIA, 2/3 of those schools are religiously affiliated, and they can offer scholarships, but it's a total different entity than the NCAA. And it has its own governing body and also its own eligibility standards. So for many people, that's one of those neglected areas that people don't really think about. We have one right down the road, St. Andrews in Laurinburg. It's an NAIA school. And typically, again, they have a strong religious affiliation. And with that, they have certain requirements that maybe you wouldn't see at some of those other NCAA schools, especially state schools. But there are about 300 of them, and they're about the kind of same size as you'd see at the Division three. They're not huge schools. They're not going to be, sporting TV contracts and everything else of the sort that you see with the NCAA. Junior college route, you're looking at a 2-year college that you can go to. The ones that offer football, you would be able to go play for 2 years. And once you graduate, you'll then have 3 years of eligibility at the NCAA level. So you could go to a JUCO, go get your associate's degree, and then transfer to another school and have 3 left. Prep schools, you could go to that, increase your value, increase your sometimes GPA, many times test scores, and you can go and play there for 6 months, typically like a Hargrave or Fork Union. I don't think Hargrave's going to bring football back anytime soon, but Fork Union has it. And you can go there and play for 6 months if they are going to let you make the team on their PG team, which is the postgraduate team. And then you can play there for 6 months against some other schools and give you a chance to showcase what you have, but you don't lose any eligibility. So you'll just go in like any other freshman would that following spring into the school that you get recruited from. So it is a neat little setting there. And I know Fork Union is a military school. So they're going to regiment them and they're going to set them up on a daily schedule. And then they get the discipline that they need. And then, 6 months later, then you have the opportunity to transfer. But they are fairly expensive. All right. So the statistics for playing at the college level, and I know that I've shown this to our players and such, but I wanted to make sure that everybody can see this, and I hope that you can. This is on the NCAA site, so you can see how many high school participants are in this column here. This was based on 2019, as I recall. So there were over 1 million football players. Only 73,000 were able to go play at the NCAA level. That's including Division III non-scholarship. So you're looking at about 7% of all high school players have the opportunity to go play in an NCAA school. 2.9%, less than 3% go Division I. Again, this is 2019, so things have changed. 1.9% go Division II, and then 2.5 go to Division III. And you can look how, baseball has comparable stats, but very few other sports, unless you're going to get into crew and rowing, you're not going to find too many opportunities. No, lacrosse does, but there are just not as many lacrosse players across the country yet, but it's getting really, really big. Ice hockey's the same way. But you can recognize the best thing that I suggest for every kid is to get involved in as many sports as they can, because then they can find some, opportunities that might not have been afforded in one sport, they could find in another, but you add all those numbers together, and that's the likelihood of being able to go. But what you gain from playing all those other sports is immense, and just the various coaching and different movements that you're going to get. But that can you can look at some of those statistics there. You can click on that when you get this later on. Recruiting services and private instructors. You have some of those recruiting services that boast a lot, and they can educate, but you can read and educate yourself on much of that just the same, or you can listen to this, and I can give you a lot of the same information that they would. But most times I believe they're a big waste of money. I think sometimes they'll tier packages, and if you pay this much, we'll make sure these people get this information, and they'll give you this type of deal, and it's tiered off where most times, honestly, it's going into trash. Whatever they send to those colleges is going into the trash can, because I remember recruiting in the college level, 25, 30 years ago, and those services would send faxes, and we'd get those things, and immediately, as soon as we get out of fax meeting, we're upset because they're wasting our ink and everything, and we just throw it away. So just recognize that I don't know that their value is very strong. You're going to do more value on your own. You're going to create more value on your own by doing your own research and being able to set up some connections with those coaches as you go through. College coaches only trust the view of a few people in evaluation. So there's nobody that's going to be able to tell you, well, I can get him recruited. That's not true. They can't get you recruited. There are very few people. Now, there are some specifics and specialty groups. There is a possibility, because those kicking groups that I know that our kickers have gone to, that's kind of the service that many of these coaches are using, because they don't have time to evaluate kickers. And then those people that go through those scouting services and do that work, they're the ones that can help get those college coaches in tune, but they're still going to come through me. And as a football coach, I'm the only entity left in the high school where that coach matters. Basketball, they don't go to basketball coaches to recruit anymore. Baseball coach, they don't, because they have all those AAU or travel ball circuits or showcase deals. So there are very few coaches in the building that have still some input on trying to help players and trying to get them those types of things. But it has changed immensely, and we'll go through some of those as we go through some of these other slides. But again, most of that gets trashed from those recruiting services. Those outside entities like private instruction, they often conflict with what we're trying to teach, and then they come back with a different teaching of skill set. They come back with a lot of different things that don't apply to what we're trying to do, and they make a lot of empty promises, and sometimes they even hurt the kids, putting them in situations that they couldn't care less, because those kids are not going to have to perform for them. So I know some of you guys are willing to spend money, and you think it's probably going to give your sons an added advantage, but truthfully, most of that money is going to be wasted, and you can go ahead and put it to better use, put it into an account, and start investing towards where you can pay for them when they go to college, because they're still going to have to pay for things when they're there, whether they get a scholarship or not. So here are the things I think we need to consider. Number one, you have to have a highlight video, a varsity highlight video, and it has to pop. Your best plays have to be in that first minute, and you can't just randomly put a bunch of plays in there and hope that it goes into what they're going to look at, because they got about 1 minute of time that they're going to, and actually they'll look at one play. If that one play doesn't pop their eye, they may not look at play two. So play one has to be your very best. And you can't have a lot of standing around on that video, because the coaches don't have that much time. You have about 1 minute to really kind of sell yourself. And in that 1 minute, that's your resume. That's your opportunity to shine. And it may or may not be the best that you can provide, but if you put that 1 minute together, it doesn't have to have all the music. It just has to have a cover slide that has your specifics, your things that you have, your contact information, your size, your class, maybe another contact information with email or phone, whatever you have. But you got to be a great player. And those coaches are going to recruit great players, because that's what, they get paid to keep their job with good players. If they don't have those great players, they're going to have a very difficult time keeping their job. So recruiting is a large part of their job, and they can't miss. And that's where things have changed a good bit, because with the transfer portal, They'd much rather get a kid that's 21 years old who's already shown himself at the college level rather than go and give him a scholarship to a high school kid. So things have changed, and we'll keep going through that as we go. But you need to be a great player. You need to have special size for your position. Uh, you have to have special speed or special ability or all of them. If you don't have those, then you're probably going to have to lessen your goals. Your dreams going to have to come down a little bit, and it's certainly changed a good bit just over the last 5 years. So what used to be a Division I kid that they would say we can go ahead and work with him, we can build him. They don't do that anymore. They say you're going to go to a lower level, you're going to have to play, you're going to have to prove yourself, and then we'll maybe be able to revisit you when you get into the portal. So you have to figure out what it is that school needs. So you're going to have to do some research, and we'll talk about that on some other slides as well. But that starts your recruiting process, your video. No video, no recruiting. It's just the way it works. And we've had a difficult time getting a lot of our players to understand how important that video is and getting it out to those coaches. When a coach comes by and recruits, he's going to see what I show him because I have a prospect sheet. I give him all the information with clicks that attach your video to it, with your transcripts attached to it. And all that certainly matters. But your video has to be something that pops because they got to say, I can win with this kid. Otherwise, they're not going to put their job on the line. You don't have to put all the special effects, but you do need that information sheet slide at the beginning so it has some ways to contact you. Don't have all that wasted time before the ball snaps. Spot shadow yourself right before the play begins. And then when it's over, don't get all the rah-rah and all the other stuff unless it really adds to what your highlight video is. Number 2, you have to have speed and dominance on the field, especially against good competition. It's very difficult for some of these coaches to evaluate when you're playing against a team that you're going to beat by 50. So it has to be many times they're going to see it against another coach at another school, and they're going to go ask him, hey, that kid that played against y'all, how was he? And you need to be dominant. They need to know who you are. The other high school coaches need to be able to game plan for you. That's a scholarship kid. If they don't know who you are, they don't remember you at every other school, then you're probably not a scholarship level kid, at least as they keep asking. Because, again, they're going to ask everybody. They're not just going to ask me. They're going to go ahead and take what I tell them, and they're going to watch the film, and they're going to come back if they're really interested and say, Coach, this is what I've heard. Tell me what do I need to believe? And then I can discount some of it. But if it's heard from 2 or 3 or 4 coaches that he's got a bad attitude, he doesn't play hard or whatever it is, then certainly it's going to have a detriment to your ability to get recruited. You need to be showing as a skill player that you can run 4.6 or better, right? So if you're a skill player, a defensive back, a receiver, a running back, you're going to be a 4.6 kid. And then you can add a 10th for linebackers. They're 4.7s and 4.8s they need to be. And then they need to be able to show it when they go on campus, which we're going to talk about. Linemen, you got to be able to dominate at the point of attack, man. And as soon as that ball snaps, you got to be able to come off the ball at low pad level, and you got to show a relentless effort where they just say, I don't ever have to coach that kid's motor. He just goes and he blocks. He'll pancake one and go find more work and go pancake another. And until the whistle blows, he's running downfield trying to block a safety so that we can score. So those are the types of mentalities they're looking for because they don't want to babysit. You got to have some size and strength. Each school has its own baseline. So when you see a college coach come in, each one of those schools, their head coach says, okay, in this position, we're not recruiting a kid under 6 foot tall. Or in this position, we're not recruiting a kid that's under 270. And that's just their standards. And they're not going to deviate from it. For instance, this past year, Catawba, just couple weeks ago, Catawba's a Division II. And they signed, I think it was 52 kids. And not one of their players was under 6 foot tall. Not one. So as you look at that, that's Division II. And most of their kids, most of their linemen were 6'5", 6'4", 300 pounds, 280, and several of them were portal kids. Man, they'd already gone to college and they're transferring in there. So that, again, is a Division II school. So imagine how hard it is for Division I and what those standards are. And you can imagine they're not going to take a lineman who's 6'1.5" to go play against defensive ends that are 6'5". They're just not going to do it because of the reach and everything else that goes into it. So you got to figure out and be, wise about it all and honest with yourself to say, I just don't have the height. I just don't have the weight. That doesn't mean you can't dream, but you're gonna have to go ahead and have some dream schools, and then you're gonna have some reality schools and backups in your plan if that's where you want to go. Potential size doesn't help anymore because a kid that is 6'4" but weighs 160 pounds, they say we don't have time. You're going to have to go somewhere else and get ready. They want somebody to come in right now and be on their two deep. If he can't be on the two deep, then they're probably not going to spend a lot of money on him. So the game has changed, and unfortunately, the idea of development at the Division One, and what we used to call 1AA, which is now FCS, they don't put as much time into development. They want kids who, again, have already proven themselves at other schools, who are 20 plus years old and can come in and help them win right now. So the high school athlete is having to weigh what he really wants, and he's going to figure out a different path. You can still get there. It just may be a different route than it used to be. Strength coaches at their camps, when you go to their camp, sometimes they're going to judge where you are and have that potential for gain. So they may be able to do they may do some jumping, they may be able to do height and weight, they may be able to do some kind of uh, strength test, and it's more of an evaluation of where you are versus where you're going. And if you're not up to par, then they just scratch you off their list. Academics. So number 4, you got to have a 3.0 at most schools. Each point after 3.0 at many Division threes will qualify you for academic money. So a 3.3 would be $3,000 of additional aid, and typically that's in the form of grants. But sometimes schools will front end that, meaning they'll give you that money your freshman year, and then all of a sudden your sophomore year it disappears. Or you go to that school your first year and you don't do as well academically as you did in high school, and they take that money away. So there are just so many things that benefit you for having better grades. So fight for every point on your GPA, because it does equate, especially at those private schools and smaller schools, it does point you more money. It also looks to your commitment level. If you're not one of which who spends a lot of time studying, and you're not one that really cares to get things done in high school, they know it's going to be very difficult for you when you come to their school, and they don't have time to babysit. So if you're sitting at a 2.5 in high school, they're going to say that kid, he's going to struggle. He's going to absolutely have difficulties at our school, whether it be going to class, getting your work done on time, writing papers, taking tests, whatever it takes at the college level. You look at that and you say, I don't know if I want to take him. So they'll take a 3.0 kid over a 2.5 any day of the week, with all things being equal. You got to have some knowledge of the game, because the coaches, if they're truly interested in you, they're going to ask you questions to see how much they're going to gauge how much you really know about the sport. How much do you know about your position? How much do you know about coverages defensively? How much do you know about route reading as a receiver? How much do you know about blocking schemes as an offensive lineman, and so forth? So you need to make sure that you do your very best to start learning football. You need to get in, pick the brains of me, pick the brains of the other coaches that we have in the building, and you need to learn as much as you can, so that when you get that opportunity, because that window may be very small, and it might be between you and one other guy, whether they're going to invest money or put you on the roster. And just imagine it's you and that one other guy, and you're going to have to show that you care more, you know more, and you'd be more coachable than him, and you don't even know who he is. So you're going to have that faceless person in your head all the time when you're competing in the weight room, when you're competing in the classroom, when you're competing and trying to learn how to play football. You got to have that faceless person as a motivator, as to I have to beat him. And then you got to get more specific. You got to start beating the guys in front of you physically. But all this goes into the equation now that makes you investable. And that's what they're doing. They're investing money. At many of these schools we speak of that are non-state schools, you're looking at education that's $40,000 a year. And if you were to get a scholarship to some of those schools, let's say even Elon's 50,000, I believe now. So you take that to go to there for 4 years is $200,000. If they were to give you a scholarship, they're giving you $200,000. That's what they're doing. And they're also riding on you to make them winners so they can keep their jobs. So they're not going to invest $200,000 into somebody who doesn't give a darn. So you have to love the sport. You have to love your position, and you have to love competing. And that's for every sport. And I know a lot of this is geared towards football in this presentation, but you can imagine how much more difficult it is in those other sports where there's less money. So you have to be different. So you got to set yourself apart, and these are things I think will help. You got to be durable. They want to see you being able to play multiple positions and even multiple sports. I know a lot of coaches, especially old school coaches, they want to see kids that compete and just want to play. But they want to see you being able to play special teams. They want to be able to say play offense, defense. You got to be a difference maker, and you got to be durable. They want to know that if you go to that school and they bring you in as a one position kid, if it doesn't work out or you turn out that there's 3 or 4 guys better than you, that they can move you to a position of need and you can still contribute. So there are a lot of kids that get played high school in one position, and they go play an entirely different position when they go to college because of what skill set they have and what the needs are of that school and team. But they're going to go recruit players. It doesn't matter about your stats. They could not care less about how many yards rushing you had. They couldn't care less about how many tackles you had. They just don't care. They want to see your film and see if you can play. And then you got to go to their camps many times and be able to do that. So speaking of camps, here they are, your prospect camps. I posted in Facebook last week. There's a living document of all the camps around the country. And then I also shared some individual flyers of schools around this part of the country where you can look at and you can go to it. But the one-day camps are usually less than $80. If you're spending more than that, I do believe it's probably wasteful. And they're probably, if they promise that they're college coaches there, typically it's a graduate assistant or a coach just getting paid just to be there. And I don't think it's always worth your while. But go to the school. If you have a great desire to go to a particular school, go find out when their camp is. And if you can't find one, then what we'll try to do eventually is get with the college coaches as they come through and see if they'll be at one of the bigger camps. So, for instance, I put down there at the bottom, maybe at ECU camp, there'll be Elon, North Carolina Central, Elizabeth City State, Wofford. All those schools will be there evaluating while ECU is running the camp. So you'll have all those other coaches on the side. So you may be able to get a bigger bang for your buck going to one of those bigger camps, but you also have to understand there'll also be 400 or 500 kids at least, and it's harder to stand out. So the biggest thing is if your school, your dream school, the one you think you can play at, is offering a camp or a one-day opportunity, you probably need to see if you can get there, and you need to be your best. You need to be peaking then. You don't need to be trying to go to 3 different camps in the same week, and that camp's the last one. So if you need help with that, I don't mind sitting down with a calendar and helping you guys try to figure that out. But I do believe going to too many camps is detrimental. We've had kids before that I think college coaches were excited to recruit, and they weren't ready because they were playing other sports, they hadn't done the various movements that they need to. And when they show up to those camps, they don't look good because they haven't done anything football related for months. And you can't just turn it on and go to these camps. And it's hurt them in the recruiting process and hurt a lot of our guys that I think would have been Division I players, but they just weren't where they needed to be because they hadn't done the things necessary to get ready for those camps. We do a lot of that in our class. So in our weightlifting classes, we do a bunch of that, especially as the weather breaks, which is now starting to do. We get to do a lot of combine prep stuff so that the multi-planner work that we try to do in the class hopefully translates to these camps. But you need to start doing your research and start figuring out what schools are offering these camps and figure out which ones are available to you on what camp dates. Also, try to make sure it's not conflicting with our stuff. Most of those camp dates are on the weekends. I know we're going to go to one on the weekend, which is the Ferrum camp, it looks like right now. So you need to make sure that it kind of moves around that because you'll have to try to at least communicate with the coaches and try to figure out what's best for everything. You need to have a clean social media and social presence. You can't have anything that's a negative representation of yourself. That means cussing. That means drugs, alcohol. It means dumb stuff. All that stuff is forever out there, and you young people need to figure it out. That's your resume too. All it takes is one little Google search, and all of a sudden they can find something that might harm you getting that job you want. So you need to be very conscientious of everything that you're putting out there into the internet space so that people are not able to take that and use it against you later on. But there also, many of them are going to come watch you play other sports. Appalachian State, their football coach came to one of our basketball games a couple of weeks ago to watch Hoggard kid and watch our kids. And he told me some things that, I thought were detrimental. And I feel bad for some of those guys as they got a chance to Appalachian State's like, I don't know if I can recruit that kid. So you got to have a great attitude, and you got to build in that habit of being that way all the time. You never know when somebody's watching. And the App State coach was in the area. He's like, well, let me just go check out a game. Let me go see these kids that are on my recruiting list. Let me go see how they compete. Let's see how they do when they're not in the game. Let's see how they do when things aren't going their way. How bouncy and springy are they? What do they look like physically? There's a lot that can be seen at a basketball game or a wrestling match or a baseball game or whatever it is, and you never know. And then I think the big question is, are you a good person? Their jobs are depending on you being a good person. So you have to be a good kid who will go to class, is going to treat women the right way, who's going to treat the teachers the right way, socially are not going to be a problem. They're going to be on time to meetings and practices and all that stuff. So they have to their jobs depend on you being a good person. Number 9, teachers, coaches, admin, random interactions. They'll just randomly run into a secretary. Do you know so-and-so? Especially if they're recruiting you. And no matter who you think in your life is meaningless or has no bearing on you, you're probably lying to yourself. Treat everybody the right way and treat them with respect, because those basic interactions that they're going to have, random interactions, could mean the difference between you getting recruited or not and them scratching you off. And sometimes I have no idea why you get scratched off. They just don't tell us. They're just going to move on because they don't want to get into that he said, she said stuff. All it takes is one person. You broke line in the cafeteria at lunch, and one of those ladies in the lunchroom, yeah, that jerk, I don't like him at all. He does this every day. He takes advantage of this, that coach might just strike you off and might not even tell me, and he just be done with you. So you never know. They're not going to babysit you, and they don't want to deal with parents who are emotionally charged either, because they're not going to have time to deal with it. So they're recruiting the whole package. It's not just you as a football player, and it's not just you academically. It's the whole package. Do they have to babysit your emotions? Do they have to take care of you outside of class, outside of practice? Are the parents a disturbance in the stands? Are they going to be the ones that are problematic for you when you're there at school? Those are the people they scratch off. And more, the parents are having a big bearing on whether kids are getting recruited or not. And unfortunately, some people are at the mercy of their parents, but the parents, y'all got to get it through your head. You can't be crazy in the stands because you never know who's watching. And all it takes is one bad interaction. They're done with you. NCAA Eligibility Center. You need to register as soon as you can. As you're a freshman in high school, you can go ahead and register. You can go ahead and start getting some of the eligibility requirements. You can monitor where you live and where you stand in those standards and requirements. Sometimes they change over the course of your high school career, but at least you're on pace for that. But I would recommend you going ahead, getting that done, because you can't take an official visit in any school until you have done what used to be called the clearinghouse, but now through the NCAA Eligibility Center. But you can go to that website, web3.ncaa.org, and then that / whatever that is. And you could go there and start working on that as soon as possible. Other things they want good people skills. They want somebody who can talk. They want a good teammate. They want somebody when they first meet you, they're going to look at how you dress. They're going to check your eye contact. They want to feel your first handshake, because that's your first impression. If you're soft and you're timid, or you kind of look arrogant and you're dressed a slob, they're like, gee whiz, that's just way too many problems. I'm not going to recruit that kid. Fortunately, we've had a lot of coaches come through here and say that our young men are handling themselves really well. probably more so than the other schools. So we're doing some good things with that, but we got to take on the whole package. It can't be just a handshake and eye contact and how we dress. We got to make sure we're taking on the whole package. Uh, Sometimes they're going to come and they don't tell me they're coming. I have no idea when they're coming. Sometimes they just call front office. Miss Moran will call and say, "Coach, you got a visitor." So I don't. I'd say rarely do I know if they're coming. If they have my phone number and I have a relationship with them, but coaching staffs have so much turnover nowadays, it's hard to keep up with it all. But the ones I know, they'll text me and say, "Coach, I'm gonna be there tomorrow around lunch or whatever." So I don't know. So you always have to be ready. You can check out the calendar for recruiting on that same NCAA website. We've shown it in class so that we can see the windows when coaches can contact and go out on the road recruiting. We'll see it later this spring. So be ready for it. They want to see confident, not arrogant. They want to see somebody who can, have a conversation like it's not the first time they've ever talked to an adult. They need to have a conversation. You need to practice this. Practice it in your church, practice at home with your parents, practice in the community. Talk to people. When you go to the grocery store, talk to people, talk to adults, and get used to being comfortable and show your confidence, show your self-worth, show your ability to communicate effectively. Because that one opportunity you get and shake the hand and you're just stumbling all over your words and you're falling out of it and you just don't look like you're in it very well, it might just give off the wrong impression, unfortunately. Show respect and interest to any coach. So any college that's coming in to recruit you should be very respectful. We've had some guys in the past that say, "I'm not going to your school." And I don't understand it. I don't ever get it because I told them before, I said, just because the homecoming queen says no to you doesn't mean you need to turn down every pretty girl that comes around. You need to make sure that you keep everybody into that equation where you never know. And you never know who those coaches know. And then those coaches may move to another school. And then 2 years from now, and you're trying to transfer something else, you never know. It's just the way the business is. So you be as respectful as possible. And sure, it may not be your dream school, but those coaches know other coaches at other schools, and they say, "Man, I'm gonna tell you what, he's a little too small, a little too slow, or something. But I'm gonna tell you, he handles himself real well." And he picks up the phone and says, "Hey, he's not our level kid, but I think you need to go check him out." It happens all the time. So don't discount that. Number 12, they're gonna check your attitude. Many coaches now, colleges pay money to get full access to our games. So if they're interested in you, many times they're going to watch you on the sidelines. They're going to watch you between plays. They're going to watch you when things aren't good. They're going to watch you when things are good. Are you one of those guys messing around on the sidelines? Are you really trying to support your teammates? Or are you really worried about yourself and you're looking in the stands and doing stuff that you ain't supposed to? So they can get every access to every video that we have in Huddle when they pay that subscription. So again, you never know when they're watching. You can't lose your cool. You can't be crazy and lose things when things aren't going our way or your way. You can't just lose all your emotions because you could be throwing away more than you know. They're going to watch every play. And again, they can't be wrong because they can't bring in a mental head case. A kid that's going to lose it because he's not playing, a kid that's not getting the playing time, not getting the ball, and whatever it is you want to go ahead and fill in the blank. They're not going to bring you in. Number 13, toughness and perseverance. Are you in shape? When you go to the camp especially, they're going to check your toughness. If you're one of those kids that haven't been working real hard, you can't overcome some of the hard drills they got you going through because you didn't understand it the first time. You messed it up. Do you finish every drill as hard as you can finish it, or do you go ahead and rely on how you feel? Can you handle contact against good competition? They want to see you being able to win at the point of attack against another college type player, or you're making plays in space against kids that are really good football players. Can you fight through hurt? There's a difference between injury and hurt, but can you fight through hurt? And those are the questions they're going to ask me eventually. They're going to say, how tough is he? And eventually, when they ask those questions, I'm going to get to all this stuff. I'm going to say, it doesn't matter for winning or losing, he plays just the same. He's great attitude, great effort. He's been hurt before. He played through it. When he was injured, he was always in it. He was helping his teammates. I can spin it whatever way I need to spin it to make you look good, but I'm not good at lying, so I'm not going to. So you need to live it. and don't fake the funk. Don't be some way and be mad at me because they asked the right questions. And I'm just going to say, Coach, honestly, he's got a lot of maturing to do. And that's usually how I leave it. I don't go through the specifics of what you didn't do, but there are very few times that I do that. I'm trying to get our kids as many opportunities as they can. And most times, if they don't ask the right questions, I'm not giving it. And that doesn't happen. So, for instance, I had a kid when I was coaching in the western part of the state, really, really good in combines, 39-inch vertical, 4.39 40, almost 4 flat shuttle. He just ridiculous in the shuttle, ridiculous in all those areas. And the coach came in. He didn't have very many highlights on film, but he had enough to fill about 2 minutes worth. And that's all the coach watched. And at the end of it, he's like, Coach, he can really play, can't he? I said, yeah, I think he's going to be a good player. And he's like, Coach, I think he's one of the better athletes in the area. I said, I agree. He's one of the better athletes in the area, if he's not the best athlete. They never asked, could he play? He wasn't very good. So he had 13 scholarship offers at the end of that recruiting process. And I remember after the sophomore year, the coach that signed him, he called and said, hey, Coach, let me ask you something. What am I missing? Why is it that he can't get on the field? What can we not do? I said, Coach, he couldn't get on the field for us. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, I told you. I gave you his highlight video. It was less than 10 plays. That's all he made. So they just didn't do their research. It's not my job to do their job for them, and it's certainly not my job to get our kids unrecruited. But I'm not going to lie for them either. So here's some other things. Do you win with your hips, feet, hands, and head? Are you really good? They want to see your feet. They want to see your hands. They want to see their hips extended. They want to see you be able to run and move. So you got to work on flexibility on your own. You got to work on foot speed, hand placement. Where's your head placement? Where are your eyes in relation to where they're supposed to be responsibility? So all that goes into the toughness equation and perseverance. They want to know if you're punctual. Do you return communication? This generation is awful. I'm telling you, you're really bad about returning communication. That's text, that's phone calls, that's even when you talk to them, sometimes you don't get the reverb of information. So you got to put your phones down. Y'all got to do away with technology for enough time for your brain to figure out what life's about. Because these coaches that are making these decisions, they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're trying to have a communication, have some kind of line of talk with you. And if you can't converse back or don't take the time to text them back, they're going to move on. So if they have a meeting scheduled or you're going to their school and you're supposed to be there at 9 a.m., you better be there at 8:30. Don't show up at 9:05 trying to apologize afterwards. And if for some reason there is something that happens, you better text them at 8:30 and say, Coach, I'm sorry. It looks like I'm going to be 5 minutes late. But that form of communication shows enough respect of their time because they got other things they have to do. College coaches are working, 100 hours a week. That's all year long. I work 100 hours a week, 120 hours a week during the football season. I'm only working, 60 to 80 in the off season. Those college coaches are working 100 hours a week every single week. They don't have time for you to show up when you want to. If they text you or email you, you have to get back with them. I don't care if you don't know what to say. You got to figure out and say, yes, sir, coach, I'll get back with you later if that's okay. Something like that has to happen, but you can't ghost them. We had that many a time where coaches will email them or text them and say, Coach, I can't get them. They'll tell me I can't get them in touch. I can't get in touch with them. And then when I go back to the kid and the kid's like, oh, I didn't, and it's just a stammering. I was like, well, I can't help you if you're not going to go out of your way to at least respond to a text. I can't help you get recruited. If that coach is texting you, it matters. You're getting recruited, and you won't go text them back. I can't help you. So communicate if there are any issues that disallow you from being there on time as well. Number 15, parent interactions. Actions in the stands when things are going well, when they aren't. I told you about the App State coach at the basketball game. Over-involved or under-involved in recruiting. So if you're the one that's doing all the talking and you're the one almost trying to be recruited and it's more important to you than it is the kid, they're probably going to say it. How do you deal with it with your child in the room? They want to see how you guys interact. Is it respectful? Is it one of which where you can tell that that child feels like they're loved and supported, or is it they're always going to defer to an overbearing parent? College coaches are recruiting the whole package, and that includes the family. So if there's anybody in your family that's over the top, don't take them on these recruiting visits. Just take the ones that are necessary, the ones that are going to be with the right questions and the right frame of mind, because otherwise you can go ahead and hurt the whole deal because you got somebody that shouldn't be there. So make sure that that interaction with parents and kids and players are always on the positive, and you guys look like that's how you are all the time. So you can't turn on the charm. Coaches will see through it. And you can't be disrespectful of your mom in the room or your dad in the room and expect them to believe that you're going to be anything other than the same with them. So be smart. Number 16, recognize it's a very long process and it is a business. It's a lot like dating. And just because you go on a date, that's camp, text, visits, etc., doesn't mean you're getting married or even called back for a second date. So you got to recognize that process is going to go through some ebbs and flows. There'll be some times where you feel like you're really important, and then other times they ghost you. You just have to find the right fit, and that right fit may mean that you're paying some money the first year. If you really love the sport, you go pay the money the first year, because you may have that opportunity to hit the portal and get in there, especially if you have video. If you go to a school and you don't play, you don't have video. And as a result, you're going to have a very difficult time finding a new home. And a lot of these kids that are putting themselves in the portal thinking that somebody's just going to take them, it's not happening because they don't have enough to justify being recruited. So recognize there's going to be a lot of disappointment along the way. But the goal is for you to find your best fit where you're happy, where you get a chance to play. You feel as though you're in a good program that, serves everybody. It's one of which that you feel is a positive culture, and one of which that you feel like you'll be a better person after being in it. Most colleges like to have a roster full of local talent, but those bigger schools are going coast to coast in recruiting. So they're not just going to stick around in North Carolina. They'd like to certainly have it on their roster, but some of those other schools like Division twos, the in-state tuition is cheaper. So that's less money that's coming out of their pool for recruiting, all those scholarship monies. So they're going to try to get more local so they don't have to spend money for out-of-state guys. So think of it on that level too. So I would start in the recruiting process of trying to appeal to the in-state schools. You may have a dream to go Syracuse, New York. If it's not going to work out and it's going to have to spend all that money, why not try to find something more local and get something where you can get more money attached to it here, maybe even at a lower level. The transfer portal's changed the landscape of everything, especially for high school players all the way through. D1 coaches, they're not going to guess or wait on players to develop. They're just going to go get those older kids who've already proven themselves. For instance, I heard here the city of Atlanta usually has 300 plus D1 high school football signees every year. 300. This year, the whole state of Georgia had less than 300, much less the city of Atlanta. So what it says is maybe it was over-recruited before, and they were striking out a bunch. Out of those 300, probably 200 you don't hear of too much going on anymore. But they're not striking out anymore. They're going and getting kids at the Georgia Techs and the Georgias and the South Carolinas and the UNCs and the Wake Forest and so forth, all those big-time D1s. They're getting kids that they know are not misses. Those are kids that can come in and be on there too deep now and help them. So the colleges are now taking only 5 to 10 high schoolers, where they used to take 20 to 25 high schoolers signing every year. And they wouldn't get too many JUCOs. They wouldn't get too many of those other kids. They were getting high schoolers, and they would go redshirt them, and then they'd go develop them all the way through. They're not doing that anymore. They're bringing in kids, and they're getting 3 and 4 deep. So if I talk about Tate's journey, and I don't mind talking about it because he's my son, but he, out of high school, signed a scholarship to UNC Pembroke. And they gave him an allotment of money that paid toward a lot of those bills. So we weren't having to pay a bunch, but we did have to pay some. He didn't like the culture there at the time. It wasn't real positive for him or a lot of others. So he was able to talk to some people, and he got an opportunity to go try to Division I Coastal Carolina. There was no assurance he was going to make the roster, but he made the roster, which was a big deal for a kid that was frail like him because he was only 170 pounds at the time. So he put on a lot of weight, worked his butt off, and he went into the spring as one of their top tight ends. He was starting in the spring for them in the spring at tight end. And then new coaching staff came in, and they brought in 4 kids that were grad transfers, or they were older. They were all 21 years or older, and they were all 240, 250, and they were ready to play more so than he was at 208 or whatever he was. So he went from first on the depth chart to 5th or 6th, and he was not on scholarship. He was not going to be on scholarship that way. So do we keep paying for him to go be a 5th string kid, or do we go find a school that's a better fit? And that's where Catawba came in, and they gave him a good package. And, he's going to play D2 and eventually go to grad school. He has, those years left to play. And when he graduates, whatever he wants to do, we're going to support, but he loves it where he is. And he's a fan of the culture. He's a fan of the coaches. He likes the kids he plays with. He likes the school and the atmosphere. So it was a good fit. But you can see he went D2 to D1 to D2. Who knows where he go for grad school? But those are the possible avenues that you may have to take. It may be D3. I know they had a starting receiver at Coastal Carolina who went D3 and played 2 or 3 years at D3 and then transferred to Coastal Carolina and became a starting receiver for Division I Coastal Carolina. So it may not matter the level that you play all the time. You just need to get college film and then go transfer where you'd like. And they obviously have to have a need, because you can go transfer you want to and be the 5th string. It's not real fun. NIL, the name, image, and likeness, those collectives that the schools have now, most of those are relegated to those schools on TV. So you're not looking at NIL deals at all these smaller schools. So the extra money that you could possibly get typically is coming from those bigger schools. Now, the NIL collectives at some of those schools are actually paying some walk-ons now. So there's some walk-ons at school that are not scholarship, but they're getting some of that collective money to pay for their tuition, to pay for their bills. And in many instances, those kids are going to school free, but they're not counted as a scholarship player. So they don't get the same benefits as a college scholarship player. And there's all kinds of things that scholarship players get that non-scholarship players don't. So those are some things to consider as well. Control the controllables and be that guy all the time. Don't turn it off. And if you have a tough time turning it on and turning it off, just leave it on and be the best person you can be, and try not to be fake. It'll wear you out. But it's exhausting to have to act in a way that's inconsistent with who you really are. So that's what I wanted to go over tonight. I wanted to make sure that we had all that information, and some of it I went quicker than maybe I needed to, but I think some of it's relevant. It kind of maybe simplifies the process more than it needed to be, but maybe it's educational enough that maybe some of you guys got something from it. But are there any questions that I can answer for you in the recruiting process? I have friends that are all over, my college coaching friends. I've known them for a long time, so I can call people. Virginia Tech, that I got plenty of people at Virginia Tech. I got people now at Carolina. I got people at Wake Forest. I got people at East Carolina. I mean, people that I know, and I can say, hey, what do you think? And when I talk to them directly, they can do it off the record type stuff and say, hey, I think he should be at this level. I think he needs to do this. I think he needs to do that. But they're not going to invest any money until he get on campus. And once he gets on campus and he can go through the drills and show all the things that I aforementioned, then you got a chance to get recruited. But it's a tough game. You got to have some special things for people to be invested in you at the high school level. Because I know there was a local kid that lost out on a lot of opportunities because he did not play hard. And unfortunately, he didn't play hard a lot of times, and they got on TV or whatever it was and got on different areas where people could see, and he just shut down sometimes. So people questioned his motor, and invariably he didn't have very many opportunities. So he was a much better player than those opportunities afforded. Anybody got any questions?
Hey, just one. Thanks for doing this. In your opinion, you mentioned not overdoing the camp situation. How many do you think is a doable, attainable, or whatever the correct verbiage there is?
Well, I can tell you, if you do it right, that camp will exhaust you. and it's 3 hours. They're going to put you through the mess. And sometimes it's more than 3 hours. And it's in the heat of June. If it's on a turf at a school that has turf, it's even hotter there. If there are 500 kids there, it's probably a little bit easier than there are if there are 150, because the 150, you're going to be working the whole time. I know I took a handful to A&T last year, and there was probably about 150 kids there. And by the end of it, our kids were pretty tired and exhausted. So my worry is if you try to do too many camps back to back, not only are you not going to look your best at the second or the third camp, you may injure yourself. And I think it's one of those that it's got to be, you sit down, you start looking at the calendar, you start looking at all the things that you're going to be asked to do and try to spread it out as much as possible, but peak out at the one you really, really need to. So if it's a Division II school, it may not be necessary that you go to camps, because Division IIs are not typically at those camps. And if they are, they're at the big ones, maybe working it. So if it's a Division II, sometimes your film's the biggest thing, and they're not going to judge anything other than meeting you in person, watching your film, talking to me. But if they're going to be at some of those camps and they're high on you, Division II typically are coming in late in the process. They're going to take what's left over from the Division I's. So they're not going to offer kids this summer at Division II. If they do, they know that they're not going to go Division I because of size or something. So you kind of, Division IIs, you're going to get in the season during our season. Any other questions from anybody I can offer? I will say that, size of the kid matters, but speed does too. So if you're not this height, but you're that fast, that can make up for that height. If you are that height, but you don't do certain things, sometimes they look at you as a project, especially as a lineman, and they'll put money. I do know that some of the linemen at many of these ACC schools, I know they're getting paid about $5,000 a month from the collective. So they're getting paid, somewhere between $20,000 to $50,000 extra a year on top of their scholarship. So there are opportunities when you're playing on TV to get money, and that money can go towards cars, can go towards putting it into savings for later, whatever it is. So if you do have that opportunity, which we're trying to push for a lot of our guys that would love to go play Division I, they got to be right at those camps, because they show up at that camp and they can show out. All of a sudden, they're not just looking at a scholarship of $200,000. They may be looking at another $50,000 to $100,000 that would get them started in life if it doesn't get them to the next level. But either way, there's so much now that's afforded that wasn't there just 5 years ago. And we're trying to navigate it best we can. But the kid's got to want to. If he doesn't want it and he doesn't love it, the coaches will see through it. And we're going to push it out on the very best we can. But at some point in time, they got to own it. And we're getting after them the very best we can in the weight room. I know a lot of kids are busting it, but hopefully it'll come to be where they can show it.
Coach Davis, this is Terry, Jake's mom. Jake's kicking coach has told us to sign him up for 10 kicking camps in June.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much. You're talking about the 1 days?
Yeah, like he's supposed to pick 10 colleges that he wants to go to and sign up for those just the kicking camp part of it, and perform.
He and I have talked before, it's got to do a roster analysis, because if they have, freshmen and sophomore kickers on their roster, they're probably not going to do it. And the way it is with specialists, they're not oftentimes on a scholarship for 4 years. Many times they're getting a 2-year scholarship. So when you talk about kickers and you talk about punters, often, or a long snapper as well, oftentimes they'll have to go do it for free or for their pay. They're going to have to pay for 2 years to get a scholarship, because they're only given usually 1 at the most 2 special team scholarships. So the collectives that they have for the Division I defray some of that, so they can give some of that money to help that. But again, you got to be special. I mean, as a kicker, you got to be kicking it through the end zone. You got to be one of those that they know that's a big timer. Otherwise, they're going to go get a JUCO kid or a kid who's 21 years old, who's stronger and bigger and can consistently do it. But I think 10's too many. I mean, if he can handle it and it's spaced out properly, it may not be a bad deal. But imagine kicking at 3 camps, almost back to back to back 3 days. he's not going to look very good the third day. There's just
No.
no way. So you have to be cautious of that. You don't want him to pull something. You don't want to waste all that time traveling, all the money that goes into it either. So I
Mhm.
think you get strategic and start figuring out. We can sit down and certainly talk about those. And I can talk to people that I know I've already talked to Wake Forest and Elon and those likes about him and what they're going to need. And it's just one of those that I know, was it Elon? No, it's Wake Forest only taking a punter. They're not even looking
Right.
at the kicker. So as a result, you got to do a roster analysis, and then you never know, because all of a sudden this kid from Kalamazoo, Michigan, he's kicking the snot out of the ball, and they're going to go get him out of the portal. And all of a sudden, all
Mhm.
this time you would invested, I don't know if it's worth it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Anybody else? Anything I can do to help? I don't mind sitting down with anybody individually and going through what I know. And if I don't know, I'll call people that do, and we'll get some answers on that. But I do know that you got to work with your sons on communicating. You got to work on how to talk to people confidently. We do it ourselves. We practice it, but they just can't, can't waste these opportunities because these coaches just know too many people. And then when they talk to other people and say, "Boy, them North Brunswick kids, they can't communicate. They don't do this. They don't talk back. They don't give me text back." It just leaves an awful look on us. And then on top of that, we got some kids that won't even take time to make a highlight video. It's not hard. We've shown it how to do it in class. I've shown it during our flex block. There's YouTube videos. They can do all this TikTok stuff, but they can't spend 5 minutes investing in themselves. Makes no sense to me. But I think that they need that film also for confidence sake. They need to watch their film. They need to be able to see some things that they did do well. And then also, on the opposite end, they need to be dissecting what they don't do well and start working on the things and make themselves better. But I think many of them have to do a much better job communicating, analyzing film, and knowledge of the game, and just general want to, because they're not going to recruit into a kid that's going to take 3 years to figure out how to play. What else? Core GPA, that's in that list. Those are your core classes: your English, your science, your social studies, your math. Those are the ones that matter the most. So when they're calculating your eligibility, it's into the core. So just because you got A's in art and all those other ones, that's not going to help when they're trying to calculate whether you're eligible to go to their school or not. So higher your grades, the better. Now that's not true for those Division threes. Division threes, the privates, they'll take your whole GPA, not just core. And again, if you have a 3.4, you might get $4,000 on top of whatever aid you get, but that may not last but a year. So regardless, every point matters on your GPA. Fight for it. And I get tired of some of these kids that tell me, "Man, I was happy to get a 78." I was like, "Dude, you get 1.5 more and you got a B. That's 3 quality points versus 2. Fight. You got to compete." And they wouldn't even go do an extra assignment to go get that 1.5 extra to go from a 2-point quality point with a 78 to a 3-point quality point with an 80. So fight. You got to work hard, and you got to try to get that to the point where your GPA is indicative of your work ethic. All right. Well, if you don't have any questions about anything else, I just want to recommend, if you can, send in some peanut butter and chocolate milk. We got our camp next weekend, starting for the little kids. So if you got any younger kids that you want to, get involved in this stuff, we're going to do speed development and our camp series. The spring schedule, it'll be a little bit more fluid because we just don't know where we can practice yet. We got some fundraisers coming up to help pay for camps and pay for all the other stuff that we need. The summer schedule's on our website. And hopefully this thing has popped up in Facebook. I put it as a timer to go in on Facebook before 8, I think. And if it didn't, just let me know and I can send it to you.
Are we doing a banquet this year?
Well, we're doing an all sports banquet at the end of the spring. So
Okay.
they're trying to bring that back. And I wouldn't have mind doing our own, but I don't think it was as well received as I was hoping, because I think they wanted to do everybody together at the end of the year.
Okay.
So I think that's May 14th, maybe. They'll publicize it soon enough, I'm sure. Anything else? If you're a freshman, start looking. If you're a sophomore, start looking. If you're a junior, you should already been looking. And then hopefully you can go ahead and make a plan on what you need. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll let you guys go. Thanks for being on the call, and reach out to me if you need something, and I'll do my very best to help and try to get you guys on the right path. But I think they've been working hard in the weight room. They're really good kids. They're trying. We just got some things that we got to get better at. And I think we're on our path to do it. So I'm proud of them. We all be good. Have a good evening. I'll stay on for a couple if somebody needs to ask.
Thank you.
You're welcome.